My grandson asked, "Why isn't Grandma in any of the old photos?" And my daughter replied, "Because she never cared about the family." When he found my hidden memory box, it became clear who was lying. Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached. I never thought a simple question from my grandson would reopen wounds I'd spent decades trying to heal. Why isn't Grandma in any of the old pictures? Noah's innocent voice carried from the living room as I stood frozen in the hallway, dinner plates balanced in my hands. There was a brief pause before my daughter Claire responded, her voice sharp and dismissive. Because she never cared much about family gatherings. She was always too busy with other things. The plates nearly slipped from my grasp. 60 years old, and I could still be gutted by my own child's words. I steadied myself against the wall, my heart hammering in my chest. But she's nice now, Noah persisted, his 8-year-old logic refusing to accept such a simple dismissal. People change, Claire answered flatly. Sometimes when people get older, they try to make up for not being there when it mattered. I set the plates down on the hallway table, my hands trembling too much to trust them. Every Sunday dinner at Claire's house had become a ritual I both cherished and dreaded. The chance to see Noah was worth enduring Claire's cold politeness, but this outright lie, burned like acid. I'd been there. For every birthday, every Christmas, every school play. I'd been there when Claire had chicken pox at 7, when she broke her arm at 12, when her first boyfriend broke her heart at 16. I'd worked double shifts to pay for dance lessons, braces, college applications. I'd been there. But Richard, my ex-husband, had crafted a different narrative after our divorce. And somehow, his version had become Claire's truth. I composed myself and walked into the living room, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Who's ready for apple pie?" Claire looked up, her expression shifting subtly as she wondered how much I'd heard. Noah bounced on the sofa, momentarily distracted from the family photo album spread across his lap. "I made it with extra cinnamon, just how you like it," I said to Noah, ruffling his hair as I passed. "Normal. Act normal." Later, as Claire loaded the dishwasher, Noah tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, can I see your bedroom? Mom says you have lots of cool old stuff." I glanced at Claire, who shrugged without looking up. "Just don't make a mess," she called after us as I led Noah upstairs. My room in Claire's house, the guest room, really, though I stayed often enough to keep some personal belongings there, was small but comfortable. Noah immediately began exploring, opening drawers and peering under the bed with the uninhibited curiosity of childhood. "What's this?" he asked, pointing to the antique chest tucked in the corner of the closet. My heart skipped a beat. "Just some old things," I said casually, though my pulse quickened. "Nothing interesting." But Noah was already kneeling before it, running his fingers over the worn brass lock. "Is it treasure? Do you have a key?" I hesitated. That chest contained the evidence of my life, the life Claire claimed I'd never lived. Photos Richard had returned to me after the divorce, claiming Claire didn't want them. Birthday cards returned unopened. Newspaper clippings of Claire's accomplishments that I'd collected religiously, even when I wasn't welcome at the events. "Please, Grandma. I promise I'll be careful." Something in me broke then, or perhaps it was something finally breaking free. I reached for the small key I kept on a chain around my neck, hidden beneath my blouse. "All right," I said softly. "But this is just between us, okay?" Noah nodded solemnly, his eyes wide with the importance of the secret. I turned the key in the lock, and the chest opened with a creak. Noah gasped as I lifted the lid, revealing stacks of photographs, letters, small mementos tied with faded ribbons. But Noah picked up a photo on top, Claire at her 5th birthday party, sitting on my lap as we both beamed at the camera, faces smeared with chocolate cake. "You are in the old pictures." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yes, sweetheart. I am." Noah dug deeper, pulling out more photos, me cheering at Claire's soccer games, helping her with a science project, standing proudly at her high school graduation. Mom said. He started, his young brow furrowed in confusion. Noah. What are you doing? Claire's voice cracked like a whip from the doorway. I hadn't heard her coming up the stairs. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger as she saw the open chest. I was just showing Noah some old photos, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Put those away, Claire snapped, striding into the room. Noah, go downstairs. But Mom, Grandma is in the pictures. Look. He held up a photo of the three of us at the beach, Claire around 12, building a sandcastle while Richard and I watched from a blanket. Claire snatched the photo from his hand. I said go downstairs. Now. Noah's eyes filled with tears as he fled the room. Claire turned to me, her face a mask of fury and something else, fear? How dare you, she whispered, her hands shaking as she clutched the photo. How dare you confuse him with your lies? Lies? My voice broke. Claire, everything in that chest is real. I was there. I was always there. She shook her head, backing toward the door. No. Dad told me everything. How you chose your career over us. How you missed my recitals, my games. That was him. The words burst from me. Richard was the one who. Stop it. Claire's voice rose. Just stop. I don't want to hear it. I want this trash out of my house by tomorrow. She turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving me alone with the scattered evidence of a life I'd lived but somehow lost the right to claim. From downstairs, I could hear her soothing voice as she spoke to Noah, no doubt spinning another tale about Grandma's confused memories. I sat on the edge of the bed, a photo of Claire's 10th birthday clutched in my trembling hands, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry. The memory hits me like a physical blow, standing in Richard's elegant living room 30 years ago, watching him systematically dismantle the truth of our life together. Claire, honey, sit down, Richard had said, his voice gentle as he patted the leather sofa beside him. Our daughter, 16 and already pulling away from me, perched next to her father, shooting me a wary glance. I stood awkwardly in the entryway of the home that had once been mine, the home Richard had kept in the divorce settlement, along with almost everything else. The tasteful furniture, the expensive art on the walls, even the family dog snoozing by the fireplace, all of it spoke of stability, of wealth, of the life I could no longer provide. Your mother and I have been talking, Richard continued, though we'd done nothing of the sort. And we think it's time you made a choice about where you want to live permanently. My heart had stuttered. This wasn't what we'd agreed. Our arrangement, Claire splitting time between households, was working despite the challenges. But I saw the calculation in Richard's eyes, the careful trap he was laying. What do you mean? Claire had asked, tugging nervously at her sleeve. Richard sighed dramatically. I know it's been hard, going back and forth. Your mother's schedule makes it difficult. He emphasized the word schedule like it was something shameful. Not the 60-hour workweeks I'd taken on to make ends meet after he'd left us financially devastated. I'm making it work, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Claire, I've arranged my shifts so I'm home every night you're with me. Richard gave me a pitying look before turning back to Claire. Your mother is doing her best, but let's be honest, you need stability. A real home. He gestured around the room. Your friends are here. Your school is here. And I'm here, always. The lie was so smooth, so believable. Richard, the devoted father, not the man who'd missed parent-teacher conferences for business trips, who'd forgotten ballet recitals for golf games. But Claire was nodding, and I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. Plus, Richard added, his voice dropping confidentially, if you're here full-time, we can convert the guest room into that studio space you've been wanting. Claire's eyes had lit up, and I knew in that moment I'd lost her. That night was the first brick in the wall that would eventually separate me from my daughter completely. Richard was a master architect of deception, building it piece by piece over the years that followed. The day after Noah discovered my chest of memories, I returned to Claire's house with a knot in my stomach. The key she'd given me years ago, a peace offering I'd thought at the time, slides easily into the lock. The house is silent, Claire is at work, and Noah at school. I make my way upstairs to pack my things, knowing Claire meant what she said about wanting me gone. In the guest room, I find my chest already on the bed, closed but unlocked. Beside it lies a note in Claire's handwriting: "Take this and your other belongings. Noah will stay with Mom this weekend instead of you." The dismissal is clear, the punishment swift. She's cutting off my access to my grandson because I dared to contradict her version of history. I sit heavily on the bed, running my hand over the worn wood of the chest. Inside are the fragments of a life Claire refuses to remember, the Mother's Day cards she made in elementary school, photographs from the 4 years it was just the two of us before Richard suddenly decided he wanted custody, newspaper clippings of her achievements that I collected even during the years she wouldn't speak to me. A soft knock at the door startles me. I look up to find Mark, Claire's husband, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "I thought I heard someone," he says, hands shoved in his pockets. "Claire said you'd be coming by." Mark and I have always maintained a careful politeness. He's caught in the middle, loyal to Claire but not unkind to me. We've never spoken openly about the family dynamics he married into. "Just getting my things," I say, attempting a smile that doesn't reach my eyes. He steps into the room, hesitates, then says, "Noah's been asking questions about the pictures he saw." My heart aches for my grandson. I'm sorry if it's caused problems. Mark sits on the edge of the bed, surprising me. "I've known Claire for 15 years, he says slowly. "She doesn't talk much about her childhood, but when she does..." He pauses, choosing his words carefully. The stories have never quite added up. I stiffen, unsure where he's going with this. The woman she describes, the absent mother who prioritized everything above family, that's not the woman I've come to know these past few years. He gestures to the chest. And apparently not the woman in those photos either. Richard was very persuasive, I say quietly. And children believe what they're told, especially when it comes from a parent. Mark nods thoughtfully. Claire's been on edge since her father's heart attack last month. He fixes me with a direct look. "Did you know he's been asking to see you?" The revelation hits me like ice water. Richard wants to see me? Why? I don't know. Claire won't tell me what they discuss during her hospital visits. But she comes home upset every time. I close my eyes briefly, memories washing over me. Richard, the master manipulator, working his magic even from a hospital bed. "Mark," I say carefully, "there's a lot about my history with Richard and Claire that you don't know. That maybe Claire herself doesn't know." He stands, straightening his shoulders. "Maybe it's time someone did." He pulls something from his pocket, a folded envelope, worn at the edges. "I found this in a box of Claire's old things when we were clearing space in the attic." I take it with trembling fingers, recognizing my own handwriting immediately. It's one of the dozens of letters I wrote to Claire during those first years after she chose to live with Richard full-time, letters she'd claimed she never received. "There are more," Mark says quietly. A whole box. None of them opened. My hand flies to my mouth, stifling a sob. All those words, all that love, intercepted and hidden away. "I haven't told Claire yet," he continues. "I thought you should know first." As he turns to leave, he pauses in the doorway. For what it's worth, Annette, the woman who brings homemade soup when Noah's sick and never misses a single one of his baseball games, doesn't strike me as someone who never cared about family. When he's gone, I open the letter with shaking hands. The paper is yellowed, the ink faded, but the love in those words remains as fierce as the day I wrote them. "My dearest Claire," it begins. "I miss you more than words can say." I read it through tears, remembering the desperate hope I'd felt when writing it, the crushing disappointment when weeks passed with no response. Now, 30 years later, I finally understand why. Richard hadn't just taken my daughter. He'd systematically erased me from her life, intercepting my letters, screening my calls, rewriting our history to cast himself as the hero and me as the villain. The realization hardened something in me. For decades, I've accepted Claire's coldness, grateful for whatever scraps of relationship she offered. I've swallowed corrections when she misremembered events from her childhood. I've nodded along to stories that painted Richard as the devoted father he never was. No more. Noah's innocent question has cracked open the past, and I won't let the truth be buried again, not when my relationship with my grandson hangs in the balance. I carefully refold the letter and place it in my purse. Then I begin to pack, not just my clothes but the evidence I've carried for 30 years. The time for silence is over. The silence in my apartment feels different now, heavier, more accusing. For years, this modest two-bedroom has been my refuge, decorated with flea market finds and the few sentimental items I managed to keep after the divorce. Now it feels like a prison of memories, each corner holding whispers of what was stolen from me. I place Mark's discovery, my unopened letter to Claire, on the kitchen table and stare at it. One piece of evidence in a lifetime of deception. After leaving Claire's house, I drove straight to a storage facility across town where I keep the things that wouldn't fit in my chest, larger items that tell the story Richard tried to erase. The box sits unopened on my couch. I haven't looked inside for years, afraid of the pain those memories would bring. Now, I reach for it with determined hands. Inside is Claire's baby blanket, the one I knitted during my pregnancy. A science fair trophy from 6th grade, her name engraved on the small gold plate. A Mother's Day card shaped like a teapot, the inside reading, "Mom, you're terrific," in Claire's careful 10-year-old handwriting. I trace the letters with my fingertip, remembering how proud she'd been of the pun. The phone rings, startling me. Claire's name flashes on the screen. I answer, bracing myself. "You had no right," she says without greeting, her voice tight with anger. "No right to fill Noah's head with lies." "I showed him the truth," I reply, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Those photos aren't fabricated, Claire. They're real moments from your childhood." "Stop it." Her voice rises. "I remember my childhood. I remember waiting for you to show up to my recitals. I remember making excuses to my friends about why you were never around for sleepovers or school events." My throat constricts. "That wasn't me, Claire. That was your father. He was the one who—" "Dad was always there," she interrupts, almost shouting now. "He never missed anything important. He's the one who stayed, who made sure I had everything I needed while you were off doing whatever was more important than being a mother." The familiar script, the lines Richard has fed her for decades. I close my eyes, feeling the weight of years of manipulation. "Claire, I want you to think carefully. Do you actually remember me missing those events, or were you told I missed them?" Silence stretches between us, then, "I don't have to do this. I don't have to listen to you twist everything around. Mark says you've been filling his head with your version too." I haven't spoken to Mark except when he gave me the letter you never saw because your father hid it from you. Along with dozens of others. "That's ridiculous," Claire scoffs, but there's a slight waver in her voice. "Dad would never do that. The Richard you think you know isn't real," I say softly. "He created a character, the devoted father, the wronged husband, and he played it perfectly. But it was just that, Claire. A performance." "You're unbelievable," she hisses. "After everything Dad did for me, for us, you're still trying to paint him as the bad guy." "I'm not asking you to take my word for it," I say, an idea forming. "There are people who knew us back then, who saw what really happened. People other than me." "Like who?" "Your friends. People who'd lie for you?" "No. Like Mrs. Peterson from next door. Like your Aunt Sarah. Like Dr. Miller, your pediatrician, who saw me at every single appointment while your father was mysteriously absent." Another silence, longer this time. I can almost hear her thinking, weighing the possibility that her perfect father might not be what she's believed all these years. "I don't want you around Noah," she finally says, her voice cold. "Not until you stop this campaign to rewrite history." The pain is physical, a knife twisting in my chest. Noah, my bright-eyed grandson who brings colored rocks as presents and falls asleep on my shoulder during movie nights. Claire, please don't do this. He's the only. I've already told the school you're not authorized to pick him up anymore, she continues as if I hadn't spoken. And Mark agrees with me. The slight hesitation before mentioning Mark makes me wonder if that's entirely true. I love that boy, I whisper, tears spilling down my cheeks. And I love you, Claire. I've never stopped, not through all of it. If you loved me, you wouldn't be doing this. Her voice cracks slightly. You wouldn't be trying to turn me against Dad when he's lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life. The mention of Richard's condition brings a complicated tangle of emotions. Despite everything, I've never wished him harm. But his illness doesn't erase the damage he's done. I'm not trying to turn you against him, I say quietly. I'm just asking you to consider that there might be another side to the story. That maybe what you think you remember isn't the full truth. I have to go, she says abruptly. Don't call me. Don't come to the house. And stay away from my son. The line goes dead, leaving me alone with the ghosts of the past spread across my living room floor. I pick up Claire's baby blanket, pressing it to my face, catching the faintest scent of the lavender sachet I'd stored it with. 30 years of separation, of being painted as the villain in my own life story, crashed down on me at once. For a moment, the weight seems unbearable. Maybe it would be easier to retreat, to accept the role I'd been assigned. To be the absent grandmother as I was forced to be the absent mother. But then my eyes fall on a photo that slipped from the box, Claire at 7, gap-toothed and grinning as she sits on my shoulders at a 4th of July parade. Her small hands gripping my hair, my arms secure around her legs. The joy between us palpable. No. I won't be erased again. I won't let Richard's lies stand unchallenged. Not when Noah is being taught the same false history that poisoned my relationship with Claire. I reach for my phone and scroll through my contacts until I find a name I haven't called in years, Sarah Miller, Richard's own sister, who withdrew from our lives shortly after the divorce. If anyone knows the truth of who Richard really is, it's her. My finger hovers over her number, heart pounding with uncertainty. Will she even speak to me? Will she tell me that Claire's version is the real one, that I've constructed elaborate fictions to avoid facing my failures as a mother? I press call before I can lose my nerve. The phone rings once, twice, 3 times. Hello? A familiar voice answers, cautious but not unwelcoming. Sarah, I say, my voice breaking slightly. It's Annette. I need your help. Are you sure you want to do this? Sarah asks, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea in my small kitchen. 3 days have passed since our phone call, and Richard's sister sits across from me, her face lined with years and worry. I don't have a choice, I reply, sorting through the evidence we've gathered, my photos and letters, Sarah's old diaries documenting Richard's behavior, even phone records Sarah managed to obtain showing that Richard had indeed intercepted my calls to Claire. He's taken enough from me. I won't let him take my grandson too. Sarah sighs, pushing a strand of graying hair behind her ear. She looks so much like the young woman who once stood as my bridesmaid, yet decades of her own struggles with Richard have left their mark. Richard was always possessive of the people he claimed to love, she says quietly. Our parents never saw it, but I did. The way he'd manipulate situations, make himself the hero, always at someone else's expense. Claire believes everything he told her, I say, the familiar ache in my chest intensifying. That I chose work over her, that I missed her events by choice, that I didn't fight for custody because I didn't want the responsibility. Sarah's mouth tightens. He told those same lies about our mother after she left our father. It's his pattern, rewrite history to make the woman the villain. A knock at the door interrupts us. I freeze, not expecting anyone. Sarah raises an eyebrow as I move cautiously to answer it. Mark stands in the hallway, looking uncomfortable in a wrinkled button-down shirt, his normally neat hair disheveled. Can I come in? He asks, his voice low. I hesitate, then step aside. He notices Sarah and stops short. This is Sarah Miller, I explain. Richard's sister. Recognition flashes in his eyes. Claire mentioned you once. Said you had a falling out with the family years ago. Sarah smiles wryly. That's one way to put it. I refuse to play along with Richard's version of events after the divorce. It made me inconvenient. Mark nods slowly, taking a seat at the kitchen table. He looks exhausted, the strain of the past few days evident in the shadows under his eyes. Claire doesn't know I'm here, he says, running a hand through his hair. She thinks I'm at the office. But I needed to talk to you. He glances at the material spread across the table. What is all this? Evidence, I say simply. Of who Richard really is. Of what he did. Mark picks up a photograph, Claire at her high school graduation, me standing at a distance, clearly there but separated from the celebration. I remember Claire telling me you barely showed up for her graduation. That you stayed just long enough for a photo op before leaving. I was there for the entire ceremony, I say quietly. Richard told the school I wasn't to be seated with the family. I had to watch from the back. Afterward, he made sure I was kept away from the celebration dinner. The only reason I'm in that photo at all is because one of Claire's friends insisted on it. Mark studies the picture, then sets it down carefully. Noah's been asking questions I can't answer. About why you're suddenly not allowed to see him, about the photos he found. He looks up at me, his expression troubled. He snuck into our room yesterday and called you, didn't he? My heart skips. Noah had indeed called, whispering that he missed me, asking when he could visit again. I had tried to be careful, telling him I'd see him soon, that his mother just needed some time. I hadn't realized the call might be discovered. Yes, I admit. But I didn't say anything to undermine Claire, I promise. Mark nods. I know. He told me about the call himself. He's confused, Annette. And honestly, so am I. What do you mean? Sarah asks, leaning forward. Mark sighs heavily. Claire's version of her childhood has always had gaps. Things that didn't quite make sense. Why she had so few photos with her mother. Why she couldn't remember specific events that most kids would recall fondly. He gestures at the evidence on the table. But this suggests something far beyond misremembered childhood moments. Richard systematically erased me from Claire's life, I say, the familiar pain rising in my throat. He intercepted my letters, screened my calls, turned Claire against me with lies, and then made sure I couldn't get close enough to set the record straight. That's why I stepped away from the family, Sarah adds. I couldn't watch what he was doing to Annette, to Claire. And when I tried to intervene, Richard turned Claire against me too. Said I was jealous, unstable, not to be trusted. Mark absorbs this, his expression shifting from doubt to growing conviction. 2 nights ago, Claire got a call from the hospital. Something about Richard wanting to change his will, update his paperwork. He hesitates. She's been different since then. Agitated. She went to see him yesterday and came home, strange. Distant. When I asked what happened, she shut down completely. A chill runs through me. Richard, even on what might be his deathbed, is still pulling strings. Mark, I say carefully, has Richard been financially supporting you and Claire? He looks startled by the question. No. We're completely independent. I mean, he gave us money for the down payment on the house, but that was years ago. Are you sure? Sarah asks gently. No regular contributions? No investments managed on your behalf? Mark stares at her, a dawning realization in his eyes. Claire handles most of our finances. She has an account her father set up for her, but she's always described it as her inheritance from her grandparents. Sarah and I exchange glances. That sounds like Richard, she says. Financial control is one of his favorite tools. Mark stands suddenly, pacing the small kitchen. If what you're saying is true, if Richard has been manipulating Claire all these years, Then what he's doing now from that hospital bed. He stops, turning to face me. Annette, I think you need to see Claire. Today. Whatever Richard is planning, it can't be good. Fear clutches at my heart. She won't see me. She's made that very clear. She'll see you if I bring you, Mark says firmly. Noah's at school until 4. Come to the house at 2. I'll make sure she's there. After Mark leaves, Sarah and I sit in silence for a long moment. Are you ready for this? She finally asks. Confronting Claire, possibly Richard too if he's behind whatever's happening? I look down at the evidence of my stolen years, the proof of a life I lived but wasn't allowed to claim. I've been silent for too long, I say, my voice stronger than I feel. It's time Claire heard the truth, whether she's ready to believe it or not. Sarah reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. I'll be right beside you. It's time my brother faced the consequences of his actions. As I gather the most compelling evidence to take to Claire's house, a text message arrives from an unknown number. My blood runs cold as I read it. Mrs. Reynolds, this is Dr. Patel from Memorial Hospital. Richard Whittaker has requested you visit him urgently. He says it concerns your daughter Claire and grandson Noah. Please call my office at your earliest convenience. Richard, playing his final move in our decades-long chess match. Whatever he's planning, I won't let him win. Not this time. Not when Noah's future understanding of his family, of me, hangs in the balance. Change of plans, I tell Sarah, showing her the message. Before we see Claire, I think it's time I paid my ex-husband a visit. Memorial Hospital smells of antiseptic and lilies, an unsettling combination that catches in my throat as Sarah and I make our way down the corridor. The doctor's text message burns in my mind. What could Richard possibly want after all these years? What new manipulation awaits? You don't have to do this, Sarah murmurs as we approach room 412. Not alone, anyway. I need to hear what he has to say, I reply, squaring my shoulders. But I'll be glad to have you waiting nearby. Sarah nods, giving my arm a reassuring squeeze before settling into a chair in the small waiting area. I take a deep breath and push open the door to Richard's room. The man in the hospital bed barely resembles the Richard I remember. His once commanding presence has diminished, his frame withered beneath the thin blanket. Tubes and monitors surround him, beeping softly. His eyes are closed, but they flutter open as the door clicks shut behind me. Annette. His voice is a shadow of itself, raspy and thin. You came. Your doctor said it was urgent, I reply, keeping my distance. Something about Claire and Noah. Richard shifts slightly, wincing with the effort. Always straight to the point. That hasn't changed. He gestures weakly to the chair beside his bed. Please, sit. This won't take long. I hesitate, then take the seat, keeping my back straight, hands folded tightly in my lap. Up close, I can see the ravages of his illness, the yellowed skin, the sunken cheeks, the tremor in his hands. Despite everything, a flicker of compassion stirs in me. I'm dying, he says bluntly. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. They're giving me weeks, maybe days. I nod slowly. I'm sorry for your suffering, Richard. But that doesn't explain why you wanted to see me. He studies me for a long moment, then says, I lied to Claire. The words hang in the air between us, simple yet monumental. About you. About why we divorced. About everything. Though I've known this truth for 30 years, hearing him admit it sends a jolt through me. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm out of time. He looks past me, toward the window where afternoon light filters through Venetian blinds. And because Claire was here yesterday, telling me about the photographs Noah found. About how upset she was that you were trying to rewrite history. A bitter laugh escapes him, ending in a pained cough. Ironic, isn't it? She has no idea that I'm the one who rewrote our history. You did more than rewrite it, I say, my voice tight with decades of suppressed anger. You erased me from it. You intercepted my letters, my calls. You turned my own daughter against me. Richard doesn't deny it. I was jealous, he says quietly. Of the bond you had with her. Of how she looked at you with such trust and love. When we divorced, I couldn't bear the thought of sharing her, of being the part-time parent. So I made sure I wouldn't have to. The casual confession of such deliberate cruelty leaves me breathless. Do you have any idea what you took from me? From her? I do now. His eyes meet mine, roomy but clear. That's why I asked you here. I want to tell her the truth before I die. I stare at him, disbelieving. You expect me to believe you've had some deathbed change of heart? Believe what you want. But I've seen what my lies have done to Claire. The woman who visited me yesterday is brittle, suspicious, afraid of betrayal. Just like I've been my whole life. He shifts again, grimacing. I don't want that for her. Or for Noah. Before I can respond, the door opens, and Claire stands frozen in the doorway, her face draining of color as she sees me seated by her father's bedside. What are you doing here? She demands, looking from me to Richard. Claire, Richard says weakly, reaching toward her. I asked her to come. There's something I need to tell you. No. Claire's voice is sharp with panic. Whatever she's told you, whatever she's trying to make you believe. Claire. Richard's tone, though feeble, carries the authority that once commanded boardrooms. Your mother hasn't told me anything I don't already know. Please, sit down. She remains standing, arms crossed protectively over her chest. I'm not doing this. Not here, not now. There is no later for me, Richard says, the words hanging heavy in the sterile air. Please, let me do this one thing right. Something in his plea reaches her. Reluctantly, Claire moves to the other side of the bed, as far from me as possible while still within Richard's reach. The stories I told you about your mother, Richard begins, his breath labored. About her choosing work over family, missing your events, not fighting for custody, they weren't true. Claire stiffens. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He cuts her off with surprising firmness. I've had 30 years to perfect those lies, Claire. 30 years of watching you pull away from your mother because of things I made up. That's not possible, Claire whispers, but uncertainty flickers across her face. I remember. You remember what I taught you to remember, Richard interrupts gently. The mind is suggestible, especially a child's. I told you stories so often that they became your memories. Claire's eyes fill with tears. Why would you do that? Richard's gaze shifts to me, then back to Claire. Because I couldn't stand losing you. Because I was selfish. Because hurting your mother made me feel powerful when the divorce left me feeling anything but. Claire shakes her head, backing away from the bed. No. This isn't happening. You're confused, the medication. The letters in the attic, Richard continues relentlessly. The ones Mark found. I took them from the mailbox before you could see them. Every birthday card, every note your mother sent, I intercepted. When she called, I told you she was too busy to talk. When she came to your events, I made sure you didn't see her, or I convinced you she'd only shown up at the last minute for appearance's sake. Each revelation lands like a physical blow. Claire's face crumples as the carefully constructed narrative of her childhood begins to unravel. Your mother fought for joint custody, Richard continues, his voice weakening. I used every legal maneuver, every connection I had to block her. And when that wasn't enough, I used you, convinced you that living with me full-time was what you wanted. Stop, Claire pleads, tears streaming down her face. Please stop. But Richard is determined to finish, as if the confession might grant him some absolution. The trust fund I set up for you and Noah? It was conditional. If you reconciled with your mother in a meaningful way, the payments would stop. That's why I called you here yesterday, to remind you of that clause when I heard about Noah finding those photographs. Claire looks stricken, her world collapsing around her. All these years, she whispers. Everything I thought I knew about my own life. Richard reaches for her hand, but she pulls away. I'm sorry, Claire. More than you can ever know. A tense silence fills the room, broken only by the steady beep of monitors. Claire looks at me, really looks at me, perhaps for the first time in decades. Is it true? She asks, her voice small. Everything he's saying? I swallow hard, trying to find words adequate for this moment. Yes, I say simply. I never stopped trying to reach you, Claire. Never stopped loving you. Even when you shut me out, I was always there, waiting for a chance to be your mother again. Claire's face contorts with a confusion of emotions, grief, betrayal, dawning comprehension. Without another word, she turns and flees the room, the door banging shut behind her. Richard sinks back against his pillows, exhausted by the confession. Go after her, he says, his eyes drifting closed. She needs you now, not me. I've done enough damage. I rise, looking down at this broken man who once seemed so powerful, who shaped decades of my life with his cruelty and manipulation. Why now, Richard? Why tell the truth after all these years? His eyes opened slightly, meeting mine with unexpected clarity. Because I saw Noah with those photographs. I saw myself in him, the curiosity, the questions. And I realized I didn't want him growing up in a world built on lies, the way I forced Claire to. He pauses, his breathing labored. Some mistakes can't be fixed, Annette. But this one, maybe there's still time. I nod once, then turn toward the door, toward my daughter who is finally hearing the truth. As I reach for the handle, Richard speaks again. I'm sorry, Annette. For everything. The words I've waited 30 years to hear. They change nothing, fix nothing. But as I step into the hallway, I feel something hard and cold within me begin, at last, to thaw. 1 year has passed since that day in the hospital. Outside my kitchen window, spring sunlight dapples the small garden I've been tending, coaxing life from soil that laid dormant all winter. It seems an apt metaphor for what's happened in our family. The kettle whistles, pulling me from my thoughts. I arrange cookies on a plate, Noah's favorite peanut butter chocolate chip, and glance at the clock. They should be here any minute. Richard died 3 days after his confession, slipping away quietly in his sleep. The funeral was small, subdued, with Claire standing stiffly between Mark and me, her grief complicated by revelations that had upended her understanding of her entire life. The first months afterward were difficult. Claire retreated into herself, canceling our weekly dinners, keeping Noah close. I respected her need for space, for time to process 30 years of lies. I sent occasional texts, nothing demanding, just small reminders that I was there when she was ready. Sometimes she responded with a brief thanks or an emoji. Often, silence. It was Noah who bridged the gap, as children so often do. 6 weeks after Richard's death, he called me on Mark's phone. Grandma, he said, his voice small but determined. Mom's really sad. She looks at old pictures a lot and cries. I told her you always make me feel better when I'm sad. Can you come over? I arrived at their house an hour later with soup and fresh bread, uncertain of my welcome. Claire opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed, her face pale. We stood looking at each other for a long, tense moment. Noah called you, she said finally. Not a question. I nodded, offering the bag of food. I can leave it and go. She hesitated, then stepped back, opening the door wider. No. Please come in. That afternoon marked the beginning of our slow reconstruction. Not a return to what was, that was impossible, but the careful building of something new. Something honest. The doorbell rings, interrupting my memories. I wipe my hands on a towel and hurry to answer, smiling as Noah barrels into me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Grandma. We brought the photo albums like you asked, he announces, pulling away to reveal the canvas bag slung over his shoulder. Claire follows him in, carrying a bouquet of daffodils. From the garden, she says, handing them to me. They came in beautifully this year. Thank you, I say, taking the flowers, catching the slight tremor in her hand as our fingers brush. This healing between us is still tender, still new. There are moments when the old pain surfaces, when doubt creeps in. We're learning to sit with those moments, to talk through them rather than retreat into defensive silence. I made tea, I tell them, gesturing toward the kitchen. And Noah's cookies. Noah darts ahead, leaving Claire and me to follow at a more measured pace. The domesticity of these Saturday afternoons still feels like a minor miracle after so many years of strained interactions. How are you? I ask as we enter the kitchen, noting the shadows under her eyes. I'm okay, she says, settling into a chair. The anniversary was hard. She doesn't need to specify which anniversary, Richard's death, yes, but more importantly, the day the truth was finally spoken aloud. I nod, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze before taking my own seat. Noah has already spread the photo albums across the table, his small fingers tracing the plastic-covered pages with reverence. So we're really going to do this today? Claire asks, a hint of anxiety in her voice. Only if you're ready, I assure her. After Richard's death, we discovered he'd kept his own collection of family photographs, images that included me, that showed the three of us together during Claire's early years. Photos that contradicted the narrative he'd constructed. Today marks the first time we'll combine all these images, my collection, Claire's, and Richard's, into a single, true family history. Not erasing the painful years, but placing them in context. Reclaiming what was stolen from all of us. I want to, Claire says, steadier now. Noah deserves to know his real family history. So do I. She opens the first album, revealing baby pictures of herself that I haven't seen in decades. Where do we start? From the beginning, I suggest, sliding my own album forward. The whole story, good and bad. For the next 2 hours, we work together, chronologically arranging photographs that span 40 years. Noah asks questions, and we answer truthfully, in age-appropriate ways. Yes, Grandpa did some hurtful things. Yes, there were years when Mommy and Grandma didn't see each other much. No, it wasn't because they didn't love each other. It's like a puzzle, Noah observes, carefully placing a photo of Claire's 16th birthday into its proper sequence, me standing awkwardly at the edge of the frame, Claire deliberately turning away. We're putting all the pieces where they really go. That's exactly right, Claire says, her voice thick with emotion. We reach the section covering the years after the divorce, the decades of estrangement. Claire pauses, running her fingertips over a photograph of herself at college graduation. I remember this day, she says softly. Dad told me you couldn't come because you had to work. I nod, the old hurt a dull ache now rather than the sharp pain it once was. I was there anyway, at the back of the auditorium. I sent you those yellow roses with the note, but Dad said they were from him, Claire finishes, meeting my eyes. I still have the card in my memory box. I always thought his handwriting looked different on that one. She laughs, a sound caught between humor and grief. I can't believe how blind I was. You weren't blind, I correct her gently. You were a child who trusted her father. He betrayed that trust, not you. Claire nods, blinking back tears as she turns the page to more recent photos, Noah's birth, family holidays, the gradual reappearance of me in the margins of their lives as Claire cautiously allowed me back in. Look at this one. Noah exclaims, pointing to a picture from just 3 months ago, the 4 of us, Claire, Mark, Noah and me, on a weekend trip to the coast. We're all smiling, the ocean wind tousling our hair, sunlight making us squint. A genuine moment of happiness captured. That's going in the new album for sure, Claire says, setting it aside. We've been creating a fresh album as we go, one that tells the true story, with nothing hidden or erased. As Noah arranges the final photos, Claire turns to me, her expression serious. I've been thinking, she says quietly, about changing Noah's middle name. I look at her in surprise. Changing it? She nods. Richard chose it, Alexander, after his father. I'd like to change it to David. She hesitates. After your father. The gesture takes my breath away. My father, who died when Claire was just a toddler, was the gentlest man I've ever known. That Claire would want to honor him, to weave my family back into her son's identity. Noah David Phillips, I say, testing it out. It's perfect. Claire smiles, then reaches for my hand across the table. There's something else. Mark and I have been talking about moving. Our house is getting too small, and with the baby coming. She trails off, watching my expression. The baby? I repeat, hardly daring to believe what I'm hearing. Claire's smile widens as she nods. 12 weeks along. We wanted to be sure before we told anyone. Joy bubbles up inside me, bright and effervescent. Oh, Claire, I breathe, squeezing her hand. That's wonderful news. We found a place, she continues. Just a few blocks from here, actually. It needs work, but it has a mother-in-law suite with its own entrance. She meets my eyes directly. We thought you might want to live there. To be close. For the children. For a moment, I can't speak. After so many years of being pushed to the margins of Claire's life, to be invited into its very center, it's more than I ever dared hope for. We don't have to decide right away, she adds quickly, misinterpreting my silence. It's just something to think about. Yes, I manage finally, my voice thick with emotion. Yes, I'd like that very much. Noah looks up from his photo arrangement, beaming. Does that mean Grandma's going to live with us? Awesome. Claire laughs, ruffling his hair. Not quite with us, buddy. She'd have her own space. But very close. Close enough for cookies whenever you want, I add, winking at him. As Noah returns to his task, Claire's expression grows serious again. I can't undo the past 30 years, she says quietly. I can't give you back the time we lost. We have now, I tell her simply. And tomorrow. That's enough. She nods, her eyes bright with unshed tears, then turns back to the photographs. We continue working side by side, mother and daughter, reclaiming our shared history one image at a time. Outside, spring sunlight warms the garden where new life pushes through the soil. Inside, we piece together the truth of our family, not perfect, not unmarred by pain and deception, but real. Complete. No one erased, no one forgotten. And as I watch Claire and Noah, heads bent together over our family's visual history, I know that this honest reckoning with who we are and what we've overcome, is the greatest gift we could give each other. Not the comfortable lie of perfection, but the hard-won truth of redemption. Grandma, Noah says, looking up at me with his earnest young face. I'm glad we found your chest of pictures. I'm glad you're in our family story now. Me too, sweetheart, I tell him, meeting Claire's eyes over his head. Me too.